get that feeling? Where you
Yeah.
see your reflection, maybe not just in a mirror, but like in how people react online,
Yeah.
or just that little voice asking how you're coming across.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everywhere now, isn't it?
Right. So that's what we're diving into. We're calling it the mirror grid. The actual mirrors, sure, but also screens, cameras, our whole digital life reflecting back at us.
And even that feeling of being watched, the surveillance aspect, it all feeds in.
Exactly. We've gone through some fascinating material on this, and the goal here is to really unpack what this mirror grid means for how we see ourselves and how we can maybe deal with it.
And it's interesting how the idea of reflection itself has expanded so much. It's not just your face in the glass anymore.
Totally. Like your social media profile. That's the
Right.
reflection you curate.
And the likes, the comments, the feedback on the reflection, it shapes what you show next time. One source really broke that down well.
Yeah. And another pointed out how we subtly, maybe unconsciously, change how we act if we think we're being, observed, even by a security camera.
That's the pervasiveness. It's constant.
Mhm.
Physical mirrors, digital ones, the potential gaze of others or technology.
It's like we're always sort of on stage, even a little bit.
That ties right into the impact of widespread surveillance, which several sources connect to this idea of an artificial self.
An artificial self. Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, it's the version of ourselves we kind of construct, often without really thinking about it, based on what we think others expect or what the mirrors, the cameras, the algorithms, the social feedback seem to want.
So we're performing for the mirror grid, basically. Building a self based on perceived judgment.
Pretty much. And the big question then becomes what does that do to, authenticity, to our real selves?
Right. If you're constantly adjusting for the reflection, where does the genuine you fit in?
That's a core tension. The material suggests this constant self monitoring, this filtering, can actually blur the lines. It can become harder over time to even know what you genuinely feel versus the persona you're projecting.
Wow. Okay, that definitely brings up the psychological side. Feeling watched, constantly seeing yourself reflected back,
Yeah.
it must have an effect.
Oh, absolutely. Anxiety, increased self consciousness, those came up repeatedly in the articles we looked at.
It sounds like a feedback loop. You see a reflection, you adjust, you worry about the next reflection.
Exactly that. You anticipate judgment, modify your behavior, and potentially drift further from just being yourself. The focus shifts from the reality to the representation.
Okay, so this grid exists, it affects us. Let's talk navigation. The sources did offer some practical ideas, right?
Yes, definitely. A big one was cultivating self awareness. Really consciously noticing when and how these reflections or the feeling of being watched influence your thoughts and actions.
How do you do that practically?
Well, one source mentioned something like reflection mapping. Basically, pausing when you feel that urge to project a certain image and asking yourself, okay, why? What expectation am I responding to here?
Reflection mapping. Huh. I like that. Just being more mindful in the moment. What else?
Boundaries. Intentionally setting up boundaries came up a lot, creating times or spaces where you're deliberately off grid.
Like surveillance free zones.
Yeah, or maybe just digitally free zones, leaving your phone outside the bedroom, for example. Simple things to create pockets of time where you're not performing or being reflected back constantly. It gives your authentic self room to breathe.
Makes sense. Creating space to just be. And the last strategy, something about reflective practices.
Right, but not mirror reflection, more like inward reflection. Things like journaling, meditation, even just spending quiet time in nature without devices.
Okay, so activities that connect you to your internal world.
Precisely. It's about strengthening your sense of self based on your own values and feelings, not just external feedback or observation. Finding that anchor inside.
So, wrapping this up, this mirror grid concept, it's clearly a major force shaping us today. It goes way beyond just vanity or tech. It's about self perception in this hyper connected, constantly observed world.
Couldn't have said it better. And those strategies becoming more self aware, setting those boundaries, and actively engaging in that inward reflection, they're starting points. Tools to help you navigate it all more consciously.
It really gives you a lot to process. Which leads to, I guess, the final thought for you listening. In this world that's always reflecting you back, how are you going to actively define yourself, separate from that constant gaze of the mirror grid, something to really mull over?